I've heard over time and from lots of people in my career over my lifetime, why do you live where you live? Why do you drive so far? Doesn't it cost you extra money to drive so far? Why don't you just move to the city? In this video, I'm going to explain to you why I have not moved to the city, why I have continued to drive an hour each way to work over my lifetime, why I have chosen to live in this neck of the woods, as they say, in God's country. The area in this video is called the Mill Race, and this local town secured this area to provide the town with electric lights in 1905. The generators were turned on by water wheels. Two small gasoline-powered standby units were available to use during periods of low water flow, and the main generator produced only 70 kilowatts, and the service was available from 6 p.m. until midnight. Now, my family didn't get electricity until around 1948 or 1949, and so this local city had electricity before us. But my dad was a farmer. My grandparents were farmers. And my dad farmed past retirement age and never planned to retire until his body started giving out. He couldn't travel anymore. It was hard for him to ride in a car. It was hard for him to drive in the city. And he waited for the next doctor's appointment to leave town. I learned from that, and I wanted time and quality of life left at the end of my career. I decided there was more to a career than just making money and having status. And I decided to sacrifice some then for freedom later now, and it was so worth it. In my career as a nursing home administrator, I would see people sell their homes, move to the cities where they were working, only to be there a short time and then get walked out by management at some point and lose their job. A lot of times they would decide they were just going to go a different way, and the person would be walked out as to no fault of their own. And so I didn't want to give up my home to move to a city that I didn't know if this was going to be long term. So because of that, I ended up driving 85 miles each way to work for 15 years because I ended up being lucky enough to be in a place where I had longevity there and I wasn't replaced. And I was able to build a community there with the staff and with the residents and with the town. And they appreciated the fact that I was a country girl. I remember going to work at first. I had the nice clothes, I had the vocabulary, I had the education, I had all of that. And no one knew I was from the middle of nowhere where I lived with goats and donkeys and I lived on a farm. And over time, I let them know who I really was. And it built a lot of respect between me and the staff there. It was a small country town. And with me living 85 miles apart, they didn't really know how I lived. They only knew how I presented myself to them. And as I let them see who I really was, it really did build a lot of respect and confidence and cooperation and communication. Me having this farm country background actually gave me more credibility, if you can believe it. But I grew up in a small town and it was unincorporated, which means there were no city government, no mayor. We only were governed by county rules, which were loose unless there's a burn ban. There's really not a lot of country rules out here. And you had the privacy. You have the fresh air. It's low cost. I could stay close to nature. I could plant my flowers. I could have my animals. And I took care of my dad the last 3 years that he was alive. And I always thought I would move when he passed away. And then once he passed away, I realized I didn't want to move. I loved it here. I still love it here. I just don't love the winters. So I'm going to share with you what a typical small town in this area looks like that's unincorporated. This is an example of some of the small towns that are still around the area in which I live. This town had a post office in 1879, and the town was along the path of the Missouri Pacific Railroad, which is how a lot of these small towns cropped up, is the railroad would stop there. At one time, it had several churches, a general store, it had a meat market, it had a school, a blacksmith shop, and a meeting hall. Later, it had a public school. And these are very common in where I live. People ask, how do you afford to live so cheaply? Well, it's because I live in the country in a rural area. The only thing that I pay for is propane 2 to 3 times a year, my electricity, and my internet, and my phone. Everything else is covered in just living off of the land. So that is about a $299 cost per month to live here. Many people would say, why do you drive so far to work? Well, because I couldn't afford not to. And when people say they can't afford to, it means they're not willing to let go of the money to spend it that way. And that's exactly where I was at. I didn't want to spend my money moving. Some people might say that it's completely unrealistic to live like this, but there's lots of us that live like this all over the United States. We live in rural areas. We live in the country. We have our own water wells. We burn our own trash. People will say it's not healthy to burn trash. Well, I actually live in a county where just the neighboring county gets all of the trash from the city hauled out here on trucks every single day and dumped in landfills in our neighboring county. You can see the mounds from about 3 miles from my house. They have to let off of the gas that it generates from the heat, from all of the garbage that is there to keep it safe so there's not explosions. So when people say it's not safe to burn my trash, I don't know if they really understand what the landfills are like, and the fact that when they put their trash in the dumpster at the edge of the road, that it's being hauled out to areas like where I live that have fresh air, green grass, trees, and we are storing their garbage and trying to keep it safe for the rest of the area by making sure that that gas is bled off regularly so there aren't explosions. It's not an ideal thing to have landfills. It's not an ideal thing to burn trash, but there has to be a way to dispose of it because, as you know, America has lots of trash. Each household has tons of trash. So, yes, this is the way that we do it. We burn our trash, we recycle everything that we can't recycle, but that keeps us from having a cost each month for trash, a cost each month for water. So those are two bills I can eliminate right off the top. And if you look at how much those cost, just those two things alone would pay for my gas to drive back and forth to work every single week. So yeah, the costs are relatively low. And sitting on your porch, drinking coffee, looking at this beautiful view that a lot of people will pay money to go on vacation to see, it can be considered a privilege to a lot of people to wake up to this every single day. And this is my life, and this is why I don't move. There's not as much of a feeling of rushing around out here. It's more laid back, it's more relaxed, it's less stressful. Yes, we can be without power more often. We can get snowed in, we can get iced in. When we lose power, we can lose it for days at a time because they will focus on the cities and the more populated areas. I'm the last stretch of highway that they will get to plow for snow or put down salt because they concentrate on the more populated areas. So it has its disadvantages. But for me, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. And I love the space, the wide open area that I can be outside, that I can pretend that the rest of the world doesn't exist for maybe even just that time until I have to go back to the city again. I'm one of those people that having a lot of neighbors around, I would feel anxiety from that. I would feel stress from all of the extra noises in town, the sirens and the loud vehicles. We do get a lot of traffic out here, but it's nothing like it is in the city. And I did just come back from Texas living in the city for 3 months. And those are some of the things that I noticed. I noticed the sound of cars like racing down the highway. I noticed the sirens. Those things are things we don't hear out here in the country. And if we do, it's a rare event and it's a big event because if you hear a siren out here, it's usually somebody you know or a relative or a neighbor. So it's not something that we just ignore. We're all like, oh my gosh, I wonder who it is. It's a whole different universe out here. In the city, there's opportunities to spend money on every single corner. Out here, there just isn't. Even an Amazon delivery will take up to 7 days. So when people talk about putting things in their cart and waiting before they order them, that just comes naturally out here because you can order something and it will take 7 days. So you really think about it before you even order it, going, am I really going to need this that much that I'm willing to wait 7 days for it to get here for me to get it? So a lot of times I just don't order anything because in 7 days, I've already figured out another way to either recycle something, reuse something, upcycle something, use something I already have to make do out here. I'm always looking for ways to do things on the homestead, hang clothes, plant food, cook from scratch, make my own homemade cleaners. These are all things that I do out here rather than spending money. And I enjoy the process and I enjoy the challenge of figuring out new ways to do things with stuff that I already have that will save me money so I can continue to be early retirement and not go back to work. Those are things that are worth it to me, more worth it than going back to work. There are a lot of things in this world that are way more valuable than money. So this is why I live out here. I hope that this has answered some of your questions of why would she live out there so far from any type of services? These are the reasons why. If you would like to support this channel or help support me, there are many ways you can do that. By liking the video, by subscribing to the channel, by letting the ads roll, because that's how us YouTubers get any pay for the videos that we produce. Also, there are always links in my description box of things that I use around the homestead to save money, as well as the 2 Depression era cookbooks that I've written with our family's favorite recipes. All of those are in the description box. Thanks for watching today, and I hope to see you in the next video.